Michigan.
Madam President, the following amendments have been cleared by myself and the ranking member.
The Senate is currently in a quorum.
I thank the presiding officer. I would ask unanimous consent that further proceedings under the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, as we've indicated, we've cleared a number of amendments on both sides, working with many, many members. There will be an additional package after this one. We're going to continue to try to clear amendments, and we expect that we will. We know of no objection to any of the following amendments, despite their being available for review, and the amendments are the following. 1056 on behalf of Senator Wicker, 1066 on behalf of Senator Ayotte, 1102 on behalf of Senator Inhofe, 1116 on behalf of Senator Wicker, 1122 on behalf of Senator Shaheen, 1129 on behalf of Senator Reid, that's Senator Reid of Nevada, 1130 on behalf of Senator Reid of Nevada, 1132 on behalf of Senator McCain, 1134 on behalf of Senator Blunt, 1143 on behalf of Senators Hagan and Portman, 1149 is modified by changes at the desk on behalf of Senator Begich, 1162 and 1164, 1165 and 1166 on behalf of Senator Warner, 1167 is modified by changes at the desk on behalf of Senator Warner, 1178 is modified by changes at the desk on behalf of Senator Murray, 1180 is modified by changes at the desk on behalf of Senator Collins, 1183 is modified by changes at the desk on behalf of Senator Sessions, 1207 on behalf of Senator Coburn, 1210 on behalf of Senator Nelson of Florida, 1227 on behalf of Senators McCain and Portman, 1215 is modified by changes at the desk on behalf of Senator Casey, 1228 on behalf of Senators McCain and Portman, 1237 on behalf of Senator Shaheen, 1240 on behalf of Senator Warner, 1245 on behalf of 1245 and 1250 on behalf of Senator McCain, 1266 on behalf of Senator Warner, 1276 on behalf of Senator Baucus, 1280 on behalf of Senator McCain, 1281 is modified on behalf of Senator McCain, 1298 on behalf of Senators Webb and Graham, 1301 on behalf of Senator Levin, 1303 on behalf of Senators Levin and McCain, 1315 on behalf of Senator Hatch, 1317 on behalf of Senator Portman, 1324 on behalf of Senator Cochran, 1326 on behalf of Senator Risch, 1332 on behalf of Senators Lieberman and Cornyn.
I concur. I move the package.
And I understand they've been cleared on the side.
Cleared on the side.
Without objection. The amendments are agreed to.
Now, I ask consent that the Senate consider these amendments en bloc, that the modifications at the desk be adopted, the amendments be agreed to, and the motion to reconsider be laid upon the table.
Without objection.
I thank the presiding officer, thank all of our colleagues for their cooperation, thank Senator McCain and our staffs, and we're going to continue to work to clear additional amendments following the cloture vote. We're now voting on cloture. We all, as leaders and managers, of course, hope that this will pass.
Madam President.
Senator from Arizona.
I'd just like to say I'd like to thank my colleagues for allowing this package, these amendments to go through. We will be working on additional amendments that we can agree to. We're about to vote on cloture, and if cloture is invoked, I'd like to inform my colleagues those amendments that are pending and filed, they will be eligible for votes. And we will be using the chronology of when they were filed, and we'll be notifying every member that has an amendment that is filed and pending and germane, filed, pending, and germane, and we will try to arrange time agreements, those that want votes, and we will be looking to also see areas where we could agree and adopt in an additional package. Now, it's my understanding that if cloture is invoked, we'll have 30 hours, and during that period, we would like to get these amendments resolved. I would remind my colleagues that if the 30 hours expires and there is still pending germane filed amendments, that there will have to be additional votes taken at some time after the 30 hours. So I would urge my colleagues who have filed pending germane amendments that we sit down during the cloture vote or just afterwards and try and arrange a schedule of votes that is most convenient for them in keeping with their schedule. Again, I want to thank my colleagues for allowing that package to go through. Those are very important amendments which have been agreed to by both sides. And I realize we have a long way to go, but this is a significant step forward. I yield the floor.
Madam President, the only additional suggestion I would have is that as members come here that have amendments that are both pending and germane, assuming we get cloture, they could check with us either side here to see where they are on the chronology, so they'll get a feel as to where they are, because we are going to attempt to move down the chronology as amendments were made pending. And Madam President, I have 4 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders. I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record.
Without objection.
And I thank all of our colleagues for their cooperation, and I understand the vote will now take place.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on S. 1867, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on S. 1867, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012, shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Aye. Ms. Ayotte. Mr. Barrasso. Aye. Mr. Baucus. Mr. Baggett. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. DeMint. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inouye, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kerry, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby.
Attorney General of the United States.
Ms. Snow. Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Tester. Mr. Thune. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Vitter. Aye. Mr. Warner. Mr. Webb. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Alexander, Ayotte, Barrasso, Begich, Bennett, Blumenthal, Brown of Massachusetts, Cochran, Corker, Durbin, Franken, Gillibrand, Harkin, Heller, Hutchison, Inouye, Isaacson, Johans, Johnson of South Dakota, Kyle, Leahy, Levin, Lieberman, Lugar, Manchin, McCain, McConnell, Merkley, Moran, Murray, Reed of Nevada, Rockefeller, Schumer, Stabenow, Tester, Toomey, Vitter, Webb, Whitehouse, Wicker. Senators voting in the negative: Coburn, Grassley, Paul. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Inhofe. Aye. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Hoven. Aye. Mr. Casey. Mr. Casey. Aye. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Bozeman. Aye. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Pryor. Aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Aye. Mr. Enzi. Mr. Enzi. Aye. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Hatch. Aye. Mr. Nelson of Florida. Mr. Nelson of Florida. Aye. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coates. Aye. Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole. Aye. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Cornyn. No. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders. Aye. Mrs. Hagan. Mrs. Hagan. Aye. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner. Aye. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Blunt. Aye. Mrs. Boxer. Mrs. Boxer, aye. Mr. Burr. Mr. Burr, no. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, no. Ms. Klobuchar. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Feinstein, aye. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown of Ohio, aye. Mr. Risch. Mr. Risch, no. Mrs. McCaskill. Mrs. McCaskill, aye. Ms. Landrieu. Ms. Landrieu, aye. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Crapo, no. Mr. Nelson of Nebraska. Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, aye. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, aye. Ms. Mikulski. Ms. Mikulski, aye. Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Conrad, aye. Mr. Kirk. Mr. Kirk, aye. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Cardin, aye. Mr. Dement. Mr. Dement, no. Mr. Kerry. Mr. Kerry, aye. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chambliss, aye. Ms. Collins. Ms. Collins, aye. Mr. Carper. Mr. Carper, aye. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, aye. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Rubio, no. Mrs. Shaheen. Mrs. Shaheen, aye. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Bingaman, aye. Ms. Murkowski. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Wyden, no. Mr. Udall of Colorado. Mr. Udall of Colorado, aye. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Baucus. Mr. Baucus, aye. Mr. Shelby. Mr. Shelby, aye. Mr. Portman. Mr. Portman, aye. Mr. Thune. Mr. Thune, aye. Cantwell. Ms. Cantwell. Aye. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Lautenberg. Aye. Ms. Snow. Ms. Snow. Aye. Mr. Menendez. Mr. Menendez. Aye. Mr. Coons. Mr. Coons. Aye. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Sessions. Aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 88, the nays are 12. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative, the motion is agreed to.
Madam Chairman,
Senator from Nebraska.
I ask unanimous consent that Stephanie Peterson, an Air Force major who is a military fellow in my office, be granted the privilege of the floor during the debate on S. 1867.
Without objection.
I want to begin my comments today on this year's National Defense Authorization Act by thanking all the members of the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. And I would especially like to thank the subcommittee's ranking member, Senator Sessions, for the close working relationship that we have shared. It's always a pleasure to work with my friend from Alabama. The annual National Defense Authorization Act is one of the most important pieces of legislation Congress passes every year, and this year marks what I hope will be the passing of a Defense Authorization Act for the 50th year in a row. Madam President, I'd like to give my colleagues a brief overview of the provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act we're considering today as they relate to the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. The jurisdiction of the subcommittee includes missile defense, strategic forces, space programs, intelligence programs, cybersecurity, the defense-funded portions of the Department of Energy, and the Defense Nuclear Facilities Safety Board. In preparing the provisions in the bill that relate to the areas of our jurisdiction, the subcommittee held 6 hearings on defense programs at the Department of Energy, Strategic Nuclear Forces, Missile Defense, and Space programs at the Department of Defense, and implementation of the New START Treaty. The subcommittee's provisions were adopted in a bipartisan manner, and I again want to thank Senator Sessions, our ranking member, and his staff, and the professional staff on the Armed Services Committee for the close work we have enjoyed with them working on the hearings and preparing this bill. Our committee oversees the nuclear strategic forces, and as many know, U.S. Strategic Command in my home state of Nebraska is charged with our nation's nuclear deterrence. It's important to note that this bill strengthens and improves our nation's nuclear command and control of all of the missions that fall under U.S. STRATCOM by providing the full authorization for a new command and control complex. A reliable and assured command, control, and communication from the President to the nuclear forces is fundamental to our strategic deterrent, and the new command and control complex at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska will provide this mission surety. In the area of missile defense, we funded the program at $10.1 billion, including the full $1.2 billion requested by the ground-based mid-course defense system. We've also included a provision that would set forth the sense of this Congress that it's essential for the ground-based mid-course defense system to achieve the levels of reliability, availability, sustainability, and operational performance necessary to ensure that the United States remains protected. The bill also supports the development and deployment of the European Phased Adaptive Approach, EPAA, to missile defense. This is the U.S. missile defense program to defend our military forces and NATO allies in Europe from Iranian missile threats. The Defense Department has nearly completed Phase 1 of the EPAA with an Aegis ballistic missile defense BMD ship now patrolling the Mediterranean, and a missile defense radar now located in Turkey. The United States also successfully negotiated the agreements with Poland and Romania to deploy land-based Aegis BMD systems in their countries in future phases of the EPAA. The committee also made a few funding adjustments in the new bill to reflect the fact of life changes since the Armed Services Committee's markup of its earlier bill, S-1258. For example, the recent flight test failure of the Aegis ballistic missile defense system with the Standard Missile 3 block IB interceptor means that the program will have a substantial delay before it can begin procurement. The program will also need additional research and development funds to fix the flight test problems. So the bill adjusts the funding to permit such fixes. In addition, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD system, has experienced slower production than expected and will not be able to use all the funds planned and requested in the budget. Consequently, the bill adjusts the funding accordingly. In mid-2009, Secretary Gates directed U.S. Strategic Command to stand up U.S. Cyber Command as a sub-unified command. The command reached a full operational capability a year ago. Since that time, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff characterized cyber warfare as one of the two, quote, existential threats to America, and a former director of national intelligence publicly proclaimed his belief that adversaries could take down the nation's power grid or devastate the country's financial system. Very damaging intrusions into government, military, and industrial networks are almost a daily occurrence, resulting in the loss of precious and expensive advanced technology, the technology that fuels economic growth and sustains our security. Over the last 2 years, the Strategic Forces Subcommittee has supported legislation to accelerate the arduous process of developing policies and doctrine to guide our responses to cyber attacks and to govern the use of cyber weapons by our own military forces. The subcommittee has also sponsored legislation to begin to close the gap in cyber defenses by developing new technological approaches in partnership with America's cutting-edge information technology sector. Moving on to space programs, the bill would provide the Air Force the authority to purchase in a block buy using a fixed-price contract the next two advanced extremely high-frequency satellites, an important part of the nuclear command and control system. This will result in a 20% savings. We've authorized the President's level of funding for the nuclear modernization program at the DOE's National Security Administration, but we're fully aware that the Budget Control Act that was passed last summer has reduced the levels that can be appropriated by some $400 million. I would note that even with this reduction, it is still a 5% increase over last year's level. I'll be working with my colleagues to carefully evaluate the President's request for fiscal year 2013 in light of the commitments both the Congress and the Administration made under the New START Treaty for modern nuclearization. This Congress made commitments for modernization, and moving forward we must honor those commitments. Most importantly, we need to continue to ensure that our stockpile is safe, reliable, and works as intended by the military so that we maintain our strategic deterrent well into the 21st century. We understand the budget climate that we're in, and it's likely that realistic adjustments must be made as a result of the mandated reductions to defense spending in the Budget Control Act. But we'll work with the Department of Defense and U.S. Strategic Command to ensure that pressing priorities are met and our strategic deterrents are not undercut. Let me again thank my colleague, Senator Sessions, and our staff for the productive and bipartisan relationship we've had on this subcommittee, and also all members of the subcommittee. I look forward to working with our colleagues to pass this important legislation. Madam President, I yield back any remaining time that has been allotted, and thanks for the opportunity to appear.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Madam President,
Senator Florida,
ask consent that the quorum be lifted.
without objection.
Madam President, I want to speak while we're in this pause here on the defense bill about a looming problem that the entire eastern seaboard of the United States has, and that is that the Spanish drilling company, Repsol, is bringing a rig in that has been constructed over in Asia, and sometime early next year they're going to drill in deep water off the north coast of Cuba. Now, the Spanish drilling company is a very competent company. As a matter of fact, they adhere to safety standards that are required by the U.S. because they drill in the Gulf of Mexico in American waters. And so if there is a responsible party in drilling, then we have one. However, there are other leases that the Cuban government is granting to other countries for drilling that may not adhere to the safe standards that are set, that Repsol will agree to abide by the same safety standards that they use drilling in American waters, and have agreed in principle that they will file a plan of action with the U.S. Secretary of the Interior in the case that there should be a spill. All of that is well and good, but there are other companies coming down the line drilling in other leases that may not adhere to their standards. If there were a spill off the north coast of Cuba, guess who's going to be affected? Because that is where the Gulf Stream comes along, and then it flows northeast, parallels the Florida Keys and all those delicate coral reefs, comes in and hugs the east coast of Florida from Miami all the way to Palm Beach, goes off the coast a few miles, hugs the coast all the way up to the middle of the peninsula at Fort Pierce, Florida, and then parallels the eastern seaboard all the way up past Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and then leaves paralleling the eastern seaboard at Cape Hatteras and goes off across the Atlantic and ends up in the northern part of Europe. Now, if there were a spill, a major spill, it doesn't have to be to the magnitude of the Deepwater Horizon spill off of Louisiana. If there were a major spill and all that oil is carried in the Gulf Stream and it comes into the coast at Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach, you know what happened to the tourism industry all along the Gulf Coast when in fact on some of those coasts there was not much oil at all, but the people didn't come as tourists because they thought the beaches were covered. Can you imagine the economic calamity that would occur as a result of a spill? And therefore, Madam President, my colleague Marco Rubio and I and other senators, in particular Senator Menendez of New Jersey, have filed legislation that will require financial responsibility from a foreign source. If they spill in foreign waters, there would be a cause of action against them if damage is done to the interest of the United States, be it the governments of the United States, be it private individuals, or be it private companies. If we do not have a cause of action where there is liability as a result of a spill by whomever in foreign waters, and if it comes in the scenario that I have laid out, which is real, spilling oil off the north coast of Cuba in a major oil disaster that is carried by the Gulf Stream up the eastern seaboard of the United States. If we do not have financial responsibility, then there is no incentive for those foreign oil companies drilling to adhere to safety standards, and if there is a spill, to quickly adhere to a spill cleanup plan. You're talking about the economic disaster that occurred as a result of the Gulf oil spill in the Deepwater Horizon. It would pale in comparison to the economic disaster that would occur in such a spill that would be carried by the Gulf Stream. And it would not only affect Florida, it would affect Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and if there were any eddy currents that carried it back in, it could take it right on into the Chesapeake, on up in Cape May, New Jersey, and you see the particular consequences. As a matter of fact, the Gulf Stream goes by Bermuda. It could have devastating effect on that country. And so, Mr. President, I hope our senators, in coming to this new reality, will realize that we have got to remember the terrible, terrible consequences as a result of a major oil spill. And remember, this was a company off of Louisiana that was adhering to the highest safety standards, and look at the disaster that occurred from them. And remember how they tried to hide the amount of oil that was being spilled because it was 5,000 feet below the surface of the water? And it wasn't until we got the streaming video that the scientists could calculate that it wasn't 1,000 barrels a day that was dumping into the Gulf. It was 50,000 barrels a day. And as a result, before they got that well capped, it ended up being almost 5 million barrels of oil in the Gulf of Mexico. We do not even know the future consequences because there's a lot of oil out there sloshing around, and there's a lot of it down there deep that we don't know what's happening down there. We don't know what's happening to the critters. We know what's happening to some of the critters in the marshes where the oil has now mixed up in the sediment, and the critters are down there digging around, and we're seeing the evidence of that when we check the gills of these fish that are being hatched and living off the sediment, and the consequences are not good. Mr. President, it is the responsible thing to do to make foreign oil companies drilling in foreign waters understand there's going to be an economic consequence if they damage the economic interests of the United States. And that's the bill that Senator Menendez, Senator Marco Rubio, and I have filed, and I commend it to the consideration of the Senate. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection. Senator from New York.
One of the reasons that I came to Congress was to be a voice for our troops and our military families. They answer a call higher than any other, fighting to protect our country, our way of life, our values, all that we hold dear. Our men and women in uniform fight to put their lives on the line every day for us, and our job is to fight for them and ensure that when they come home, they have an opportunity to go to college, find a good-paying job, afford a new home, start a family, have access to quality health care. After a decade of 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, we've asked more of our military than ever before, including our National Guard and reserves. Our reserve components are deployed in record numbers, including serving in combat zones. While they serve alongside our active duty military, our Guard and Reserve members don't have access to all of the assistance, services, and benefits that the troops that they fight shoulder to shoulder with have. Currently, our Guard and National Reserve members are left largely on their own to find and obtain services that they need to recover from combat, rejoin their families, and adjust back to normal civilian life. This needs to change. I'm offering amendment number 1211, together with my colleague Senator Blunt of Missouri, to give our National Guard and Reserve members the services that they not only deserve, but that they desperately need. This amendment would expand access to health care, family and financial counseling, and other services that the Guard and Reserve members currently do not have full access to. My amendment extends nationwide a highly successful program that's existing right now in Vermont. It would set up a system of support of fellow veterans across the country serving as outreach specialists, people our Guard and Reserve members can talk and relate to, and help them get the access to the services that they need. It would give the Defense Department additional resources it needs to provide counseling and registration and reintegration services for the National Guard and Reserve members. This amendment has the strong support of the National Guard Association, who said this amendment would help ensure 448,000 National Guard men and women who have served in Iraq and Afghanistan since 9/11 are provided with the necessary services upon their return from war. Members of the National Guard and Reserve are the citizen soldiers who step up and accomplish extraordinary acts of valor and bravery for our country. They are veterans, and they deserve these services when they return because of the sacrifices they've made and continue to make for our great country. Mr. President, I would also like to speak in support of Senator Murray's amendment, number 1189. Mental health disorders, substance abuse, and traumatic brain injury affect nearly 20% of all service members who have been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. That's 1 in 5. But unlike active duty service members, Guard and Reserve members don't have direct access to the counseling services that they need, putting enormous strain on these veterans and the families who stand by them and who have stood by them. Senator Murray's amendment would embed mental health professionals in armories and reserve centers, bringing mental health support within reach for Guard and Reserve members where and when they need it. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I suggest an absence of the quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.